And then we want to hit record on here as well. Push the record button and record it on this computer. We'll be able to trim the beginning.
Okay. All right, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We're right at 5:30. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County County Commissioners Candidate Forum. With us tonight, we have Bob Otwater, Stephen Boyle, and Laura Moss, who are all running for District 5 seat. We also have incumbent Tim Zork and Joe Ehrman, who are both running for the District 3 seat. I said it last night, and I'll say it again. I think we're lucky to have this many qualified candidates who are willing to serve our community. I thank you all for participating, and I look forward to hosting a good, clean forum. To set the tone for the evening, I'd ask Jeff Smith, our clerk of circuit court, to lead us in an invocation and prayer. Jeff?
Thank you, Jordan. Usually I bring a founding fathers quote, but yesterday I did a little thing, and today I want to do something too because of the things that we are facing in our society today, both pandemic and social unrest. I think we're facing giants. So just a little scripture here from 1 Samuel, where David went out to face Goliath, and everyone around him told him, David, you can't do this, but God had put a sense of knowing within David, and he knew he was going to succeed in the name of the Lord. And King Saul tried to give him his armor, and David said, I'm not used to this. I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to go in just with my slingshot. So if you have battles to face in life, don't let others tell you how to fight. God will personally direct you in that way, in the way that you should go, and his word is your weapon. Make sure you have God's presence before you go to fight any giants. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the technology that allows us to have this forum, even though we're in a pandemic. Lord, everything is under your control. You know what's going to happen. And Lord, we just place it in your hands. We ask your blessing on this forum, that civility and your wisdom will prevail. Lord, we thank you for providing the talents to the first responders who are on the front lines fighting this pandemic, trying to make us safe, keep us safe. And Lord, we thank you for the military keeping us safe from outside perpetrators. Lord, we are facing giants and we need your presence in our lives. Be with these candidates, that they have your wisdom and your strength. These things we pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Candidates, I invite you all to make your opening statements, starting with Bob Otwater.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Hello, I'm Bob Otwater, and I'm running for Indian River County Commissioner, District 5. From the moment when Nancy, my wife of 42 years, and I made Indian River County our home, we found a welcoming community. I asked myself, how could I give back to my fellow citizens and make it an even better place to live? I realized that local government has an enormous impact on our lives, much more so than the state and federal governments get all the press. I decided to take the knowledge that I acquired working 36 years in the investment management business, managing $750 billion of bond and money market assets, to help government provide its services more effectively and cost efficiently. This takes on even more importance as we deal with the economic and financial consequences of the pandemic. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and complain. There's a lot more work to roll up one's sleeves and be part of the solution. I've served on numerous government boards and commissions to benefit all parts of the county, and importantly, I've gotten things accomplished which are listed on my campaign website. All this work has been done without compensation to me. The Taxpayers Association of Indian River County, who is sponsoring this discussion, awarded me their Fiscal Conservative Year Award in 2018, quote, in recognition of your efforts to save taxpayer dollars for all citizens of Indian River County. As commissioner, I will continue to do this work for the citizens of Indian River County in the true spirit of public service. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle, you are on mute still.
Jordan, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for reminding me. My name's Steve Boyle, and I decided to run for county commission because at this point in my life, I had the opportunity to give back to the community. Based on my 36 years of living and working in the Treasure Coast, I've had the opportunity to work with numerous governmental agencies, cities, counties, while watching the area grow. I've had the opportunity to raise 2 children, one through the public school and one through the private school. And I have 2 children and 3 grandchildren currently living in Indian River County. This provides me a unique perspective on what I need to achieve and maintain the quality of life in Indian River County. My goal is to help guide the county in the direction that will maintain and improve the quality of life that we all enjoy for future generations to come. During my years of work, my clients have included the Florida Department of Transportation, where I worked acquiring right-of-way, South Florida Water Management District, and the St. Johns River Water Management District, where I've worked recently acquiring property for water storage and environmental purposes, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, where I've worked on such projects in Indian River County, which included the Pelican Wildlife Refuge, the Archie Carr Sea Turtle Refuge, the Avalon Beach Addition, and other public land acquisitions. I've also worked with the Florida Inland Navigational District, acquiring dredge spoil sites. I've worked with the Federal Aviation Administration for communication towers and radar sites. I've worked with the Land Trust to acquire environmental land in Indian River County. I've worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to acquire various parcels in Indian River County. And I've also worked with most of the cities and counties in the Treasure and Space Coast. This provides me a unique perspective on working with various governmental agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And Ms. Moss, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Indian River County. Indian River County was established on June 29, 1925. It was yesterday. You're a day late, Jordan. Should have invited me then. Anyway, Laura Moss, Vice Mayor, City of Vero Beach, and former mayor. Actually, I just found out a few weeks ago, I am the first woman to start as mayor in the 100-year history of Vero Beach. So it's been very special. And I was a top vote getter, in 2016 and the top vote getter in 2018. So thank you to everyone out there who voted for me. And really thank you to everyone who supported the electric sale. I also was the mayor with a mandate, and that is according to Standard & Poor's Global Market Intelligence. The article is on my website, votelauраmoss.com, so you can go there for all the details. But I look at it as, you know, frankly, everyone made it happen because everyone in the community was so supportive and encouraging of me during that period of time. It was necessary to complete the sale. So I want to say thank you to everyone. The other thing that I viewed as a big accomplishment is coffee with the mayor. I know they seem at odds with each other, and no, Standard & Poor's didn't write an article about that. But that's being in touch with the people, which I think is very important. I place a huge value on that. I just, that was a wonderful thing. That hadn't been done in 10 years when I brought it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And Mr. Zork.
There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Zork. I'm the current county commissioner serving for District 3. Thank you, Indian River County Taxpayers Association, for hosting these candidate debates. As your commissioner, my agenda and goals have been focused on transparent government, fiscal responsibility, economic opportunity for all residents, eliminating government barriers to affordable housing, creating opportunities for the private sector to grow our existing businesses and have sound policies to attract new businesses, taking care of our most needy and less fortunate residents, maintain good quality growth, standing up to special interest groups that try to influence your decision-making, placing the environment and the Indian River Lagoon projects as top priority. I will continue to work diligently on issues that are important to Indian River County residents and businesses. Since elected, I have brought forward over 130 commissioner-led matters relating to the sale of Vero Beach Electric that saves $22 million a year for the former ratepayers, the Indian River Lagoon, historic Dodgertown, government procurement, economic development, recreation, and the GO Line bus system. Uniquely, I'm one of the few born and raised Indian River County residents and have spent my entire life working in the private sector. During these uncertain times, Indian River County residents deserve a commissioner with experience and a true understanding of the issues that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zork. And Mr. Ehrman.
Thank you, Jordan. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Ehrman, and I want to be, excuse me, I want to be your next county commissioner for District 3. I want to thank the Taxpayers Association for putting this event on, especially in these difficult times. This way it allows all of us and you, the voters out there, to see and have a voice in this political process. For those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised right here in Indian River County. My grandfather lived here, as both do my children and my granddaughter. My family has had many different businesses since being here in 1928. Growing up, I was a part of them. I served with the Indian River County Fire Rescue for 35 years, retiring as the rank of captain in 2015. I have a deep love and understanding about our county. I know where we have been, and I would now like to be a part of focusing on where we need to go. I do this not for a paycheck or personal gain, as I feel that elected office should be a service and not a career. I am in favor of term limits for all elective offices. I'm a fiscal conservative who believes the government cannot and should not solve all our problems. But the things that county government can do, we must do them well to benefit everyone. Why am I running? Simply that I feel my experience, integrity, teamwork, and leadership can be a major asset to the board, and we can return the District 3 seat back to you, the taxpayer.
Thank you, Joe. And moving on to the questions, I've got a good one that we can start with a little warm up, and Joe, you'll be the first to respond on this one. Our organization stands for low taxes, prudent spending of those taxes, and limited government. In the current atmosphere of budget cuts for our state and local governments, how will you reduce spending and use our tax revenue more efficiently? And how will you contribute to limiting our county government? Mr. Ehrman.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You'll be answering that one first. Sorry.
I thought you said Mrs. Moss was up first. I'm sorry. I apologize. Well, I'm all about low taxes and conservative spending. And it's important that we as county commissioners make sure that we are fiscally accountable to you, the general public. And it's just something that you should do. That's just my belief. It's always been my belief, as long as I've been a registered voter and been a part of this county, is that we should be fiscally conservative. There is many ways, we could look at cutting taxes throughout the county, but overall, I think the county and our county administrator and the county administrator prior to Jason Brown have done a pretty good job at identifying where we need to cut, where we need to save, and what we need to do. And I think, and I will say that all county commissioners from 20 years back kind of started that process, and I think they've all done a darn good job. And I think we need to continue to do that. To sit here and name a specific area where I would cut taxes is probably not something I can do right now, especially not in a minute and a half. But I would think that when I'm elected to office, I will take a hard look at these, and I will work with the county administrator. And most importantly, I will work with my fellow commissioners and do my homework and make a sound presentation if I believe something needs to be cut, or even if we need to increase funding for this particular service. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. And Bob, your response on that question.
Okay, thank you. In general, I think that the county commission has done a good job in terms of keeping expenditures down. But here's the reality. We're going to get cut with grants, with sales tax revenue drops and so forth. Sales tax are commonly used to fund capital expenditures. So we're going to have to look very hard at those. What are the things necessary to really keep the government moving along, as opposed to some of the nice things that we need to have? I'm going to take a close look at the budget. I would point to my work on the school board audit committee, where I was the first one to point out in this county that the school board attorney was getting paid an outrageous $244,000 a year, and pushed the school board to put out a RFP to try to lower costs. I've done the same thing in Indian River Shores. And I'm going to continue to try to use my financial analytical background in analyzing municipal credits, look for opportunities to reduce costs in this difficult economic environment.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Boyle.
Sorry about that. I've run a business for 35 years in this county, and I've made it through 2 recessions. And I understand when it's necessary to cut spending when revenues go down. But I've also learned that you can't always cut spending if it's at the result of losing production. So whenever it comes to having to make decisions on cutting spending, it has to be looked at very carefully and determine how it will affect the quality of life of the people who are affected the most by the cuts. The most important thing when I get into the commission will be to study the budget and see if there's any areas that there is waste and determine how we can go about minimizing the waste and ultimately saving money. I think the county's done a fine job over the last many years that I've been here. And so the most important thing is to go forward and to study what's happening and determine the revenues and determine what we can do to save money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And Ms. Moss.
Yeah, thank you. I've had the opportunity the last few years, 4 years now, to work on the Vero Beach budget, which actually the workshop is the same dates as the County Commission. And our budget is very detailed, not quite as large as the county, but we're, I'm very proud of what we've done. We've been very fiscally responsible as a council. Last year, actually, we reduced the millage rate for the city. And we also, within the last year, used the proceeds, some of the proceeds from the FPL sale to pay off debt service and also to limit the unfunded pension liabilities to decrease that amount. So I'm very happy with what we've done. As far as where the county's going, I think we need to be advised that Wesley Davis, our property appraiser, told us that we have to be very careful with amounts, be very conservative, because the amounts that will be given were based on January numbers. And as we all know, that was before COVID. So he advised us to be cautious. I plan to take that advice. I think that's very good advice. And actually, I read that article to the council at a city council meeting. So I know we are all very, very concerned about that, and we are all very fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. And Mr. Zork.
A great question, thank you. About 4 commission meetings ago, I proposed a freeze on spending at last year's levels. The reduction in revenue is a moving target. The only way we know it's moving is downward, that our revenues are going to be dropping. So I think we have to look at prioritizing essential services first. Back after the recovery of the 2008-10 slowdown, you would see emergency response vehicles being towed in because of lack of, we weren't able to replace our rolling stock as we normally would have. So we have to prioritize where we cut these spendings at. There's been some mention of the CARES dollars, but if you look at the fine print of the CARES dollars and the spending restrictions that are on it, some people are saying, well, it's an exchange in revenue. Well, it's not. We're going to have a very challenging time to put very much of that CARES dollars to work effectively. One, the state's giving us 25% currently, then the state has to validate and reimburse you the first 25% before they'll give you the rest. And all this has to be completed by the end of December, a very short spending time window in government procurement side. So again, on the spending side and reduction, we first need to prioritize our essential services, children's services. We need to keep those at the forefront, those that will have a human impact of the cut. We can do deferred maintenance at some of our recreational assets. We can stretch some of the life between some of our scheduled large re-roofing projects that we have that end up, those are millions of dollars in those projects. So I think prioritizing our spending to make the dollars that we do have the most effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zork. And you will be up first on the next question. Many local governments, including our own, choose to operate enterprise funds when a public service generates sufficient revenue to pay for the cost of providing it. Our water utilities and our former electric plant, for example. There are different schools of thought on how these utilities should operate. Some believe utilities should make a profit that is sent to the general fund to keep the millage rates down. Others believe utility customers should be charged the lowest possible rates consistent with a well-run, competitively operating utility. To which business model do you subscribe and why?
I subscribe to the lowest cost model. At the county, we have two enterprise funds that I'll bring to light. The utilities department, very functional, even with not having raised our rates in over 2 decades. We made a minor adjustment last year. We were still able to fully function, fully expand, fund our renewal and replacement, provide what I would say is outstanding customer service, update and install new AMI meter readers. That is an enterprise fund, and it's also delivering the service at the lowest cost because we don't transfer the revenue out of the enterprise fund to some other portion of government, thus bleeding those revenues out of there. Also, the building department is another enterprise fund. It only functions, again, on the revenue that it receives through the services that it provides. They have a very healthy cash balance going forward. There's no tax dollars used to fund either of those departments. They're fully self-sustaining on their own through the revenues that they generate. So to me, the more places, the more operations you can put as an enterprise fund really is smart government and smart spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zork. Mr. Ehrman.
I'm sorry, hit the unmute button again. I'm technologically challenged sometimes, but I do actually agree with some of what Mr. Zork just said on that. I think that's one area where we can agree. I think the county has done a good job with their utility services. I think they do provide outstanding customer service. Every time I've ever had an issue with them or something like that, they responded immediately and been great. And I attribute that, to the department heads and to the county administrator. And I just want to make sure that we as a county are doing that, and apparently they are, but make sure that that we continue to reinvest in the system to make it the best possible system we can make, and to ensure it's efficient, and ensure we're doing everything possible we can for our customers, and that we're making it better, and that we're following all the rules and regulations to limit, whatever the brine that these that we expel from these water plants and things like that, and to make sure that our sewer plants and lift stations are 100% working efficiently. But other than that, I think that as long as it can pay for itself, that's no doubt the way to go, such as other county functions, such as the golf course, shooting range, and things like that. As long as they're paying for themselves, we're doing something right.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrman. And Mr. Altwater.
I'm strongly in favor of running these enterprise funds at cost. Government should not be involved in making a profit. Unfortunately, we have a prime example here in Indian River County. It used to be with the electric utility of the city of Vero Beach before FP&L took it over. Now it's the city of Vero Beach Water and Sewer Fund. Over the last decade, they have pulled out $10.6 million in profits, and then general fund administrative chargebacks, an additional $8 million. $18 million out of that fund, in many cases, was taken from people who could not vote that city council and Laura Moss out of office. So we ended up in the unincorporated area, the county and Indian River Shore, supplementing their budget. And at the end of the day, it's very unfair for another reason. The people that end up having to pay the higher charges are quite often economically disadvantaged. The people who end up getting the benefit of it are the high value property owners, like those in Central Beach and along the lagoon. It's an unfair transfer of wealth from those people to the higher paid property owners.
Thank you, Bob. And Mr. Boyle.
Got it. Well, being a businessman, I am not for a county operating or an enterprise fund operating for a profit. I think that it should operate on a break even. However, when you look at the break even, you need to make sure that there's adequate funds for the operation, maintenance, and the reserves for replacements when you're running the fund. I was part of the area in the county that had taxation without representation. And I said if they didn't get the electric utility sold, I was going to stand on the bridge and throw buckets of tea into the water. But anyway, so no, I'm all for the enterprise model at a break-even amount.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And Ms. Moss.
Yes, well, thank you. I guess I better defend myself here. It wasn't a hostile takeover. Neither the electric nor the water and sewer issues. Those were franchise agreements. And it's true, it's a little unusual because my understanding is when a city expands, it usually annexes the pieces of property to which it supplies electric and water and sewer. And we probably should have done that because then, Indian River Shores would have been part of Vero Beach. That would have been wonderful. And South Beach, and we would have moved west. That we probably should have done that in retrospect. So a little late now. And I'm sorry we have a few unhappy customers, but I think we've done a good job. As far as the county goes, as I understand it, there are 3 enterprise funds. I'm looking at their budget book. And I think, the golf course pays for itself, so that's great. The utilities, it sounds like leave as is, sounds like a good situation. The building department, I hate to say it, but I get a lot of complaints because they don't realize that it's the county, not the city. So I field a number of phone calls on that. So there's something that's not quite right there. And if we need to spend some money, if we need to charge a little more to fix it or do whatever they need to do, I don't know if it's personnel training or what's required, but when I get elected, I'll find out. You can bet on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. And you'll be up first on the following question.
Okay.
What is your opinion of ballot referendums? Some argue it's a subverted form of representative democracy. If elected, what criteria would you use to determine if a proposed referendum should be approved to be placed on the ballot or be addressed through the normal commission business?
I think if it's something where you're planning to charge people more money than what they are already spending for something. I know we have a referendum coming up that involves the school board. And I think that's a fair way to handle it. If you're planning to raise amounts of money, you want to be sure that, well, it's not a hostile takeover. You want to be sure that everybody supports that everybody's on board. We've talked about that in the city. Actually, we will have to do a referendum for the Three Corners property to change the usage. That's another example. Right now, it's in the city charter. It's stated that should be for recreational and cultural purposes. So if we use that for another reason, we remove the protection of that piece of property and seek to commercialize it. We need to take that to the people. And frankly, I'm always in favor of that. Basically take things to the people. When you're making really big decisions about money or about property, and that, by the way, I've read is the single most valuable piece of property, large piece of property on the East Coast of Florida. So we have to be very, very careful how we treat that. I think it's the right thing to take it to the people. I'm always happy to hear what the people have to say anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. And Mr. Ehrman.
Okay. I think that anytime you can allow the general public and the electoral to vote on an issue, that's a good thing. But they can't vote on everything. They can vote on the people that represent them. The people that represent them should do the good job. I am for ballot initiatives. I think they can be a good thing, but they have to be very well researched. They have to be very well vetted. They have to look, the county commission needs to decide, are they good for the county? Is it a specific, does it just help a specific group, or is it going to benefit the county? We have to use those as measuring tool to do that. So it's very important that happens. for instance, the children's services just came up. When I first looked at that, I thought that was a great thing, and I still think it is a good thing. I think it just needs to be tweaked a little more and researched, and I think it's something that we as a commission need to look at for next year again. But it has to be just right, and the electorate has to be encouraged and educated as to what they're voting on to make it happen.
Thank you. And Mr. Zork.
Yes, thank you. On ballot initiatives, first thing I think you have to look at, is there truly a need? Using children's services, if you look at the study that they undertook and identified the need, and then took the need and looked at what would it cost to fund that need, when they brought forward their initial millage request, it was reduced significantly prior to them withdrawing their request due to the effects of COVID. So first thing I think you have to look at, is there truly a need? Is there not somewhere else you can cut to fund it? And if there's not, that would be considered to be an option. There was mention of the school ballot measure. The judge ruled in on that the county commission serves as a ministerial role. We're not to get into, is it something they need or not need? That's not in our purview with that. So ballot initiatives are a good way to take the pulse of the community. But I think you first have to look at if it's something the commission has to decide if they want to support. You have to first identify the need, quantify the need. There was also a proposal for environmental lands that came forward. I brought the question up that currently about 35 to 40% of the county is in public and conservation land ownership. What are the specific parcels that we need to complete conservation plans? Again, identifying the need first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zork. Mr. Altwater.
I think there has to be a reasonably high bar on putting things on the ballot. Certainly if there's a situation where you're asking for the taxpayers to give money to the government, particularly when it's a new type of tax measure, I think that meets that requirement. But what I get a little concerned about is a lot of these issues tend to be pretty complex. And how do you distill it down in a way that the average citizen can understand? They have very busy days out there in their lives just trying to survive, raising their family and so forth. And can you really provide enough information that they can make a measured judgment? At the end of the day, the reason why all of us here on this meeting are running is because the public citizens are conveying some of their decision making to us. So I think it has to be a reasonably high bar because you can just end up having the measure, the ballots just having all these different referendum. And I think all of us have been lobbied in front of county buildings with bizarre amendments to the Constitution and so forth that the person who's asking you cannot even explain. So that's my concern.
Thank you. And Mr. Boyle.
I agree with what most everybody said. And in my opinion, if it's going to take money out of the taxpayer's pocket, it should be voted on. If it's not going to take money directly out of the taxpayer's pocket, as everybody has discussed, most people don't have the time or the understanding of what's on the ballot initiative. And I spend a lot of time researching them and trying to read them. And oftentimes when I go to the poll, I'm not really sure what it is actually saying anyway. And in that case, I think most of the ballot initiatives, or all of them that don't take money directly out of the taxpayer's pocket, should be handled by the commissioners because that's what part of their job is.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And you'll be answering the next question first. After the brutal murder of George Floyd, some government officials have called for a defunding or dismantling of police forces and adding more funding to social programs in lieu of traditional law enforcement organizations. What is your position on law enforcement funding and the county government's role in funding support or social programs in our communities?
There's two things that I never mind spending my tax dollars on. And one of them is education, because education is the way up in the world. The second one is our protection, which includes the military, the police, and the first responders. I am completely against anything that helps or that would cause a change in the quality of life that we have.
Thank you.
Well,
And Ms. Moss. I'm sorry, Stephen, did you have anything further, or was that the end of your response?
nope, that's it.
Perfect.
I would not vote to defund the police whatsoever.
Okay, Mrs. Moss.
Thank you. You know, I think in this era of COVID, the two most important things that we need to feel safe and secure, and that's our law enforcement. And then, of course, we need healthcare, and that's the health department. So I would definitely not want to underfund either of them, defund or underfund for that matter. Either one of those so important factors in this equation. With regard to the city, we have a very good, as a council, have a very good track record in terms of funding the police. The county, last year, I know the sheriff received $500,000 less than what he requested. I wouldn't do that. I don't think you do that. I think you work with your first responders, your law enforcement, make sure they have everything they need. I mean, especially in this time, I think that's a very important priority, that people feel safe and secure. And we need to be sure that the people who are doing that job, who are putting their lives on the line for us, literally, as we've seen, unfortunately, so tragically demonstrated the last few weeks, we need to be sure that they have what they need. At City Council, for example, we talked about body cameras just a couple of weeks ago, and Chief Curry is in favor of that. So when it gets to budget time, we'll see if that's something that will fit into our budget. But I'm very much and very strongly in favor of law enforcement and healthcare needs at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Mr. Zork.
Yes, thank you. Great question. On law enforcement, the sheriff's a constitutional officer. He proposes his budget. We fund the budget to whatever sort of negotiated amount is between the county administrator, the sheriff, and the commissioners. Once that budget leaves the county commission and gets funded to the sheriff, we don't know, was everything that was proposed in spending, was it spent on that or was it spent on something else? So you have to look at, kind of follow the money. As for any cuts, I'm not in favor of any specific cuts. I think there have been some requests for body cameras. The cameras are essentially free. It's the cost of storage over long term is where you really spend your large ongoing carrying cost. Also, in the sheriff's budget side, what I call the third largest hospital cost in the county is the infirmary medical services provided at the county jail. They are taking care of a large number of healthcare related issues based on the inmates. And you're looking at significant dollars that are spent on that. There was also a proposal from the prior sheriff to build a new $60 million sheriff's complex facility, which was not greeted very warmly. We did approve money for a study to look at what are the future needs, what the sheriff's office might need, and come up with a much more reasonable budget for those facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zork. And Mr. Ehrman.
That is absolutely a great question. And I can tell you it's a little personal, excuse me, it's a little personal for me. I did 35 years of my life in public service as a firefighter here in Indian River County. I cheated death on numerous occasions. And I have a son that's now employed by the Indian River County Sheriff's Department. Those are not the reasons. It's the world that we live in now. This world is a different place right now. I'm praying and hoping every day that it'll get back to somewhat normal. But the last thing we should ever do is defund our police, defund our emergency services of any kind. They've always fought for more additional money and more additional funding to try to keep up with what's going on out there. And they continue to play catch up year after year. You know, we can't do everything as a county. We have to stay within our means, but no way in hell will I defund our emergency services or our police or sheriffs in any way. And I plan on being, as a commissioner, encouraging my other commissioners to work with the sheriff and with the county administrator to work with the emergency services and fire rescue division to make sure that they have everything that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrman. Mr. Altwater.
You know, it's interesting the pressures we put on our law enforcement. They have to deal with a bank robber or a criminal of that nature, but we also ask them to be mental health counselors dealing with homeless people on the street, going into a domestic dispute situation. They have to be marriage counselors, and they at times they have to deal with people on the street that have drug addiction. So what I think we need to do is really have more resources to those type of things, because at the end of the day, if we don't get those type of situations cleaned up, it's going to be a situation either pay me now or pay me later. And by pay me later, meaning that these folks will end up in jail where we're going to have to foot the bill day after day for it. So I would never think about defunding the police. I would want to get these resources in to try to stop the problem as quickly as possible by giving more resources to the health department and other areas of that nature.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll enter what I might call the Thunderdome portion of our forum, where I'll give all of you the opportunity to ask a question directly to an opponent of your choice. For these questions, you'll have 2 minutes each to respond. And as I mentioned earlier, please note that after you've asked your question and your opponent has responded, there will be no further rebuttals. Ms. Moss, you'll have the honor of asking the first question.
Yeah, well, all right. This is a question I've been curious about. This is a true event, and this occurred on April 26, 2018, when Mr. Brian Barefoot was leaving his position as mayor. And at that meeting, Mr. Haviland nominated Mr. Slater, who became mayor, and Mr. Allwater nominated himself, did not get a second. They voted on it, and the vote was 5-0. So Mr. Allwater voted against himself. So it makes me wonder if, you know, if he's lacking the confidence lacking confidence in himself, you know, to really be a leader. And I'll tell you why this question is important, because sometimes you have to take that 4-1 stand. You have to be the one in the 4-1, because you're moving a position forward and you're getting people to understand a position. It's really important to have the courage and the stamina to do that. So that would be my question for him.
Okay, well, if you look at the voting record in Indian River Shores, there's been many times that I've been on the wrong end of a 4-1 vote. That particular vote there, it turned out that I wanted to have solidarity with our new mayor. And as you will note, that I attained the vice mayor on a 5-0 vote. But, you know, it's interesting. One thing, I've been called a lot of things. Having lack of confidence is not one of them. I've gone head to head with the school board with regard to the school board attorney. I brought that to the attention of the public. The outrageous amount of money has been spent. I've dealt with Virgin Trains in terms of trying to get them to establish safety equipment through our community. So it's interesting. I just don't see how anybody would, if anything, I would say people would say that I may be overconfident at times.
Thank you very much, Bob. Mr. Ehrman, you may ask your question.
This question's for Tim. When this was presented to me last Friday, I had a hard time coming up with just one question for you, because there are so many, such as why have you flip-flopped on so many votes, your brushes with questionable ethics that Commissioner O'Brien called you out on a while back, or the numerous basically scoldings you've received from fellow commissioners for not coming to a meeting prepared or bringing up an issue that wasn't relevant. But the one that stood out to me the most was how you talk about your leadership. The definition of leadership: an action of leading a group of people or organization, or art of motivating a group of people to achieve a common goal. So my question is, you're 8 years on the county commission. You have not served nor even been nominated to serve as chairman or vice chairman. Explain it to me. I really want to know why.
Oh, you are on mute. You are on mute, Tim. Thank you.
Here, is that better?
Yep, we can hear you.
There we go. So if you look back, Joe Flesher served 8 years, never served as chairman. Was he a bad leader? Did he do something wrong? Did he upset somebody? Maybe it was the IRNA's vote on charter government. Maybe that upset a few particular commissioners that took a vow to say he'll never be chairman under my watch. I was the one that proposed Joe Flesher to become chairman so that his district would have a turn at it. So I think you have to look at, I'm not the only one that's been that. And I'm the junior commissioner. You have Susan Adams in her first term, then it's me, then you have Commissioner Solari at 12 years, and you have Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Flesher that'll be at 16 years after their current term. So getting along with others, if it means giving up your principles, I'd rather be on a 4-to-1 vote. But if you look at historically, 85% of our votes are 5-0, 85%. So if you get along with somebody 85% of the time, I think you're doing pretty darn good in working as a team approaching issues within the county. 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Solari had a 4-1 against him, or a 1-4. It's not uncommon. If you have a particular passion or drive on an issue and you want to be the one man out, that's stating your position on something. Doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you have principles. So if you have a 4-to-1 vote or you don't get to become chairman, I don't have an issue with that. I didn't run to have the ego to be a chairman. That's not in my makeup. I'm there to serve the public. I meet frequently with people all the time. I have an open door policy. I'd say I'm in the office more than any of the other fellow commissioners. I think I have 10 seconds left, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Altwater, you may ask your question.
Okay, this is to Steve Boyle. Steve, unlike me, you haven't served on any government boards or commissions to help improve life here in Indian River County. In your Chamber of Commerce video, you said that you hadn't done so because of conflicts of interest with your property appraisal business. Given that you also said that your son works with you in the business, won't those conflicts of interest continue to exist if you were on the commission?
That's a good question. And every time you sign an appraisal, you have to sign a certification. And the certification is part of what they call the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practices, which is the laws that guide what an appraiser can do. And every time you sign that certification, you have to say that you have no current or prospective interest in either the real estate or the people involved with the transaction. If I get elected to the commission, or should I say when I get elected to the commission, I will officially retire from my business. Anytime that anything comes up where there's a possibility that Boyle and Drake might be taking on an appraisal assignment for the county, I would abstain from the voting in it. And I don't foresee it as a conflict of interest once I'm out of the business, as long as I don't do anything to send business his way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zork, your question.
Yes, thank you, Jordan. My question to Joe is, the day before my scheduled appointment with the current fire union board members, they sent me an email canceling the appointment and it was never rescheduled. So I've never met and spoke with them. It makes sense since you're their past president. So tell the taxpayers, what did you agree to when they interviewed you to get them to cancel my interview with them?
Well, that's not a very good question, because I had nothing to do with it. I don't dictate what they do. You know, I've been retired for almost 5 years now. There's many people there that I don't know anymore, because it's been such a revolving door of personnel going in and out that we become a training ground, because, you know, you and others have not really taken the initiative to look at our emergency services in a proper way and make it competitive for them to stay and want to stay here in Indian River County. There's been over, as far as I know, there's been over 150 people have left, have come and gone since I retired 5 years ago. That's absolutely terrible. We've become a training ground and we're funding it. We're funding Palm Beach County and we're funding Brevard and in Orange County. It's unbelievable. Mr. Zork, I can't answer your question because I haven't discussed it with them. I don't know what they told you or what they didn't. I know they've come out and support me, and I'm telling you right now, it was unsolicited by me. And yes, I do know that the union president of the firefighters, he works hard at what he does. And he has and it's important that we have a good relationship with these unions. You have a good relationship with your union, you're going to have a happy county, you're going to have happy taxpayers. But I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Thank you. And Mr. Boyle, your question, please.
My question's for Bob. Bob, I was a resident of the South County, and I was part of and in the Vero Beach electric utility. And so my question is knowing that a partial interest sale of the portion of the franchise that was within the town of Indian River Shores would jeopardize any future sale of the city's portion and the unincorporated county's portion, why did you constantly insist that the contract include a partial sale clause?
Okay, what you have to remember is that there was a franchise agreement between the city of Vero Beach and the town of Indian River Shores. And that, if I remember correctly, expired October or November of 16. It was an arm's length transaction. And we had the right to walk away. Vero Beach suddenly said that doesn't apply anymore. So to try to force things along, we kept that partial sale in there. Now, the other thing is that we were working at the same time with FP&L, myself, Steve Faraday, Glenn Hearn. There was a bunch of us that were working with FP&L to try to show them that it made sense for them to acquire the entire utility property. And that's what ended up turning out to be. For example, to get that done, I traveled twice on my own dime up to Tallahassee, and I testified in front of the Public Service Commission. So I wanted to get the whole deal done, and fortunately, we did get it done because it's been a boon to economic activity here in the county.
Thank you, Bob. You'll be up first on the following question. The latest news from our county government has been the possibility of a mask mandate to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Would you be in favor of a mandatory mask mandate? Many citizens have commented that this step should be one that is voted upon by our elected county commissioners instead of the county administrator, who is unelected and currently has the final authority on this decision. Do you think it is appropriate that the county administrator have the ultimate power to issue such a mandate, or would you prefer this decision be made by the Board of County Commissioners?
I would prefer to be made by the Board of County Commissioners. I think it's a decision of such import that it cannot be delegated to the county administrator because of the potential impacts of that. I have looked over the county administrator's proclamation. I have it right here. I think it's a good middle ground. The reality is you can try to mandate people wearing masks out in public. They're just not going to do it to the extent where you're going to get 100% compliance and you're going to just get people angry about it. I think continuing to push the idea of that it makes sense for them to do. For example, the county commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, they had a video showing what occurs in terms of particles being expelled by somebody speaking with a mask and without a mask. I stood up in front of the county commission and I suggested that they publicize that video to younger people who are, for many cases, ignoring any face mask restrictions. They tend to respond to Instagram, YouTube, things of that nature to try to educate people. But you can't have the sheriff's people out there arresting people for not wearing a mask.
Thank you. And Mr. Boyle.
Ever since the whole pandemic has started and the thought of wearing a mask has come up, I believe that everybody should police themselves. And I also firmly believe that if you go into a situation like a restaurant and you don't think that the staff or the other people in there are acting correctly, you have the right to leave. And I also believe as a business owner that if I was a manager of Publix and you wanted to come into Publix and you weren't wearing a mask and I felt you should, for whatever reason, I have the right to ask you to leave. So I believe that everybody should be responsible for policing themselves. And there's no reason to make laws or mandates that can't be enforced. And so once again, I think that it's really up to the people to police themselves. But if it had to be, a decision would be made, I would be in favor of it being made by the county commission and not by the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And Mrs. Moss.
Well, thank you for this question. And thank you to the Taxpayer Association. You tried to schedule this on a day that I had off, except I didn't have off today. We had a special call meeting just about this very topic. And we passed an emergency order. And I will let you know, I actually have a copy of it with me, fortunately. So without being too boring or taking too much time, I will tell you what it says here. And this, by the way, to go to the issue of enforcement, what we are doing is, and this is in, let's see, paragraph 8. This emergency order is intended to act as a measure to seek voluntary compliance. So there's the key, voluntary compliance with the provisions contained herein, and to educate, always important with this situation, educate and warn, even more important, of the dangers of non-compliance. So that's the tone of it. But to go back specifically to the situations to which it applies, in paragraph 1, what we do is we are strongly encouraged to wear face masks, strongly encouraging, remember that, all persons working in restaurants, grocery stores, food service, salons, gyms, and retail establishments or business open to the public, or any other indoor facility visited by the public. So that's strongly encourage face masks. And then any indoor city facility, they must wear a face mask. And we are encouraging it on the city transportation, anything public transit within the city. And social distancing is also encouraged. And I'm out of time. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Zork.
Yes, I think if we go with anything beyond what the county administrator put into effect or announced on Friday that went into effect on Monday would be voted by the full commission. On the positive side, our count numbers here in the county are trending where we'd like to see them even before the mask guidelines that were put into place. And I think you can't legislate common sense. You can't legislate full compliance. I think the methods and what we put into place so far is a good first step. It's all, again, it's run by the numbers. What's happening? What are our trends? What are our numbers? Right now, we're at 0.004% of the total population is tested positive. Of that, those that have required hospitalization is 0.0003. So we have some of the best numbers in the state. We'd like to continue that through this additional measure that went into effect on Monday. I think there might be a little bit of confusion potentially between each jurisdiction having a different rule. Not everybody's going to know where to understand what those rules are. I think allowing the private businesses to establish their own requirements. Many of them have been doing that since the reopening of phase 1 started. So we're all, I know I've told the administrator happy to have a special called meeting if he felt there was a need to do anything more significant than what has already taken place. And again, then we meet on July 7th, again, as our first schedule, but happy to meet if a need arises sooner, if our numbers go the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Urban.
You know, I wish we lived in a world where everybody was responsible enough and everybody was courteous enough to make sure that they did what you're supposed to do and be responsible. But we as government are faced with sometimes doing some mandates, and I'm not a big proponent of that. I know all the arguments. I've heard the arguments back and forth of why we should wear a mask, why we shouldn't wear a mask. I've heard, people that have certain medical issues and stuff are not good at wearing masks, but we have to do what's best for everybody. And I think that our county administrator has done an outstanding job with this. And he's done it with the permission of the county commission. And I think they're both to be commended for that. I think they've handled this in Indian River County pretty darn good. But, you know, a good county administrator will not make a decision that's counter to the commission on an issue that they discussed. But having, you know, emergency authority is very important because you don't know when you may have to use that all of a sudden. You know, it could be during a hurricane, any other sort of type of disaster or something like that. And I trust Jason Brown to make good decisions, but he's not going to make those decisions without letting the county commission know what needs to be done. And the county commission's not going to let him make decisions without their authority. So I think he's done a heck of a good job.
Thank you. For the record, I think he's done a great job too. Just wanted to see everybody's thoughts on that. At this point, you know, I want to move into a time check. I had one more question, but I see we're at 6:30 on the dot and still haven't gotten to our closing statements. I'm inclined to move on to closing statements because I want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. So I think we'll go ahead and move on to those closing statements. I'll save that other one in the back pocket for another time. Mr. Ehrman, would you please make your closing statements?
Sure, glad to. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to the Taxpayers Association for having this event. And I want to say that I understand the hardship that all of us are going through right now in these difficult times. And rest assured that I've always been there for my community, whether I served in an elected office or not. We have a lot of different issues going on here in our county. And as always, when one thing ends, there's always something else to take its place. I promise you that I will take the task of commissioner head on by listening to you. I will research and do my homework for each challenge we face. You know where I will stand on the issue. I will not flip-flop or pander for votes. I will remain steadfast in my conservative principles, but flexible enough to do the right thing for our county and our citizens. I'm honored that 5 former county commissioners, Fran Adams, Tom Lowther, Ruth Stambridge, Art Newberg, and Gary Wheeler have all endorsed me, and also former Sheriff Tim Dobeck and former Sheriff Gary Wheeler. And another thing I'm very excited about is former County Administrator Joe Baird has endorsed my candidacy for County Commission. But again, I want to thank the Taxpayers Association for hosting the event. I want to ask for your vote on August 18th. And remember, it is very important in these difficult times that we as citizens exercise the greatest power we have, and that's the power to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zork.
Yes, thank you. As a local businessman with decades of experience, I have a positive record spearheading county initiatives that support local families, businesses, and jobs. As your county commissioner, I will continue to protect our families, businesses, our lagoon, and our incredible quality of life. My record is solid. On the other hand, it's very obvious my opponent doesn't understand the issues. I have faith in the residents of Indian River County to see through the smoke and mirrors of my opponent's negative campaign. What is he hiding behind? Is it his 6-figure lifetime taxpayer-funded retirement? He will never experience a loss of income, but yet he claims to understand what families and small business owners are going through. My opponent is a 35-year dues-paying member of the union. My opponent moved through the ranks to become president of the union. And in 2 years, the county will be negotiating an estimated $100 million multi-year labor contract with the same labor union he was president of. Who do you think he will be looking out for? The taxpayers or the donors? 50% or more of his donors will benefit from this new contract. Don't be fooled by his negative message. I have a solid record for putting the taxpayers ahead of special interest. I ask for you to check the facts and do not allow the District 3 commission seat to be hijacked through the lies and manipulation of my opponent. On August 18th, re-elect a leader you can trust, no one with special interest. Visit my website at timzork.com, timzork2020.com, timzorc.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Mr. Altwater.
Thank you. The United States is facing what might be its worst public health crisis in its history and its most difficult economic crisis since the Great Depression. There's more demand for county services due to health impacts and economic hardship caused by the disease. At the same time, the county's finances have been negatively impacted by the sharp drop-off in sales, tax, and tourist tax revenue, In addition, aid from the state government Tallahassee will likely be sharply curtailed. This difficult environment will require a county commissioner with financial experience and a record of accomplishment to navigate these troubled waters. I am the right person for this job. Just look at the list of excellent leaders on my website who have endorsed my candidacy. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, Indian River County Commissioner Bob Solari, Fellsmere Mayor Joel Tyson, former Vero Beach Mayor Pilar Turner, and the man who was responsible for starting the effort to get FP&L to purchase Vero Electric, Dr. Stephen Faraday. These people who have served our community so well are intimately familiar with my record of accomplishment for all the citizens of Indian River County. I humbly ask for your vote for County Commissioner so I can continue my efforts to make Indian River County a better place to live. Please remember that regardless of where you live in the county, you can vote for me, Bob Auwaerter, for Indian River County Commissioner. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Auwaerter. Mr. Boyle.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and the taxpayers for having us tonight, and I'd like to thank the other candidates for participating. My campaign platform is all about the quality of life in Indian River County. I'm here to clean up the Indian River Lagoon, bring more quality jobs to the county, have quality controlled growth, because we're going to have growth and everybody needs to face that, and also have a business-friendly atmosphere and lower taxes. The job of a county commissioner is to set policies, guide staff, approve budgets and expenditures, and approve investments in the future that will improve the quality of life for all the residents in the county. I can work with the other commissioners because as a businessman, I know how to listen, I understand how to negotiate, and I know how to compromise. I'm heavily invested in the community. I have a business here for over 35 years. I've raised 2 children here. I have 3 grandchildren here. Currently, both of my children live here and work here. My business has survived for more than 35 years through several recessions because I know how to handle money and I know what it means to cut costs without cutting production. I think that through my diverse business background, I'm a good choice for County Commission, and I hope that you'll consider voting for me. If you need more information, please go to my website, steveboyle2020.com. And thank you again for having us tonight.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Boyle. And Ms. Moss.
Well, thank you for hosting this. I really appreciate it. I have not asked for any endorsements because frankly, the only endorsement I need is from the people. And the media has referred to me as a woman of the people, and I take that as a huge compliment. I have worn my official name badge every day, wherever I go. That's 24/7 since I was elected, which was November of 2016. And that allows people to ask me questions, comment to me, complaint department, reporting for duty, Publix, the post office, wherever I am. And I think we need that kind of grassroots leadership. This is a difficult time that we're entering, and frankly, our relationships are not good. And by that, I mean the relationship between the county commission and the municipalities. And people have complained to me about what they view as arrogance on the part of the county commission. And I'm not citing any specific county commissioners because they change over time and their opinions change with the issues. However, that's the takeaway of people at this point. And I was asked to run a couple of years ago. I was at the Cupcake Challenge, and a woman who didn't live in the city came over to me and she said, you know, we need you to do for the county what you do for the city. She says, I don't live in the city, but I watch you on city council all the time. We need you. And it got me thinking about it. And I took that as a huge compliment, and I plan to live up to that. And by the way, at the meeting last week, city council meeting, my other council members, each individually said the same thing I'm saying right now. So it's not that, it's not about me. This is about the council. And I know Sebastian's city council, it's also been a bit contentious. And that's what I mean by reaching out to municipalities. So that's videotaped if anybody wants to watch that meeting, and not prompted by me in any way. Actually, I was surprised because each of them campaigned on the promise that they would improve their relationship with the county commission, but they found it to be impossible.
Thank you.
VoteLauraMoss.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We will keep up the work on our end of the Taxpayers Association, hosting additional forums in the future. We look forward to doing so. And I thank you all again for your participation.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
End the meeting.